Pete Slosberg at the Gingerman. All right, Pete. So tell me a little bit about your summer beers and what's going on with the new beers.
Well, we have 6 current beers. We have our 4 year-round, 2 seasonals, summer and winter. And now in July we're coming out with 4 new ones. Reflect a range of colors and flavors. We have a golden ale flavored with strawberry. We're calling it Strawberry Blonde. We have a American Pale Ale, very hoppy amber ale.
Now, how many IBUs would you say that is? The Pale Ale.
I think it's about 37, but
Which one?
the Pale Ale.
It's in the 30s.
It's in the high.
I can get you that.
Okay.
It's in the high 30s.
Okay.
But it's funny, brewmaster Pat has done an extraordinary job of getting bitterness, the flavor of bitterness, out of a relatively, in the scheme of things, lower BU factor. Like Wicked Ale has a high hoppiness, but its BUs are in the high 20s. But it tastes more like a mid to high 30s. So Pat's doing a great job of extracting the bitter flavor out of the hops in the beers. We have a porter that, more or less a robust porter, that we flavor with maple. A little twist on the English. English originally made porters with molasses and treacle. We're doing an American twist by using maple as both a sugar source and a flavoring agent. And last but not least, we have what we're calling maple multi-grain, which is just that. But the interesting twist is a lot of people who use a lot of different malts. They're mostly... Oh, can I have a little more Rodenbach, please? This is great. Instead of using lots of different barley malts, we're using 2 barley malts, wheat malt, but we're also using rye malt and oats. And the combination of the 5 malts, 4 grains is it's an amber beer with a nice spicy flavor to it from the rye.
So this will be a good replacement for your morning breakfast cereal.
As you know, beer is liquid bread, but our government won't let us use that. But there is, the granola sector out there may get into it.
Let's talk a little bit about the Strawberry Blonde. Obviously, fruit beers have become incredibly popular over the last year. Speak to that a little bit. What's your opinion as to why the fruit beers suddenly have gained all this attention and all this favor?
Well, I take a long-term view of things, and fruit beers in the U.S. aren't new. It's a resurrection of flavors and styles that have been around for centuries, if not millennia, except that in the last 50 to 75 years, the American public hasn't had choice. The only choice they've had is a multitude of minor variations on the American light lager style. But in Europe, there have been a number of fruit-flavored beers. The Belgians use a lot of fruit. But in history, you name the fruit, it's been used. So it's nothing new. It's not unique. But I think what people are doing now, well, the preface to that is the variety of styles that are coming out now, like I said, aren't new. It's just the fact that home brewers like myself that have started companies are now offering this wide variety, the 60-odd styles of beer from around the world are now coming out from micros and specialty brewers and brew pubs. And fruit flavors are one of several of the styles are based on fruit. So now what's happening is, I think, as the American public is experimenting and trying specialty beers, a lot of people like the dark, thick porters and stouts. A lot of people don't. A lot of people like sweet beers. I'm truly amazed at how many people are shying away from call it the hophead beers, and are looking for lighter, sweeter beers. And at beer festivals especially, it's really neat to see how this concept of West Coast brewing and hopheads is indeed a phenomenon, but it's not the complete thing. There's a whole segment of people out there who like sweeter beers. You've had Trappist beers, the sweet Trappist beers. It's amazing how many people will go migrate to the sweet side of the spectrum from the bitter side of the spectrum. And with fruit beers are primarily either golden ales or wheat beers, pretty neutral in flavor. and then the fruit adds both flavor and aroma to the beer.
So would you then not agree that it's not really a case of people switching their taste more than it is just more mainstream beer drinkers coming across and finding the fruit beers to be more of a training wheel beer for them, and it's getting them excited about craft brewing, and maybe perhaps they're not ready for the hoppier, stronger beers, and the fruit beers are actually acting as an invitation to them to come on over and try these craft beers. You don't believe that. You believe that it's people that are already drinking the beers, that their tastes are shifting. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. First of all, I don't believe fruit beers are stepping stones for everybody. For some people, yeah, it's a stepping stone. But there is a segment out there of, call them specialty drinkers or American light lager drinkers, who will start trying beers that are on the sweeter side. And in many cases, it's not a stepping stone. People don't go from a sweet fruit beer to an India Pale Ale. Some do, but there is a large segment of people who like sweet beers. So it's not so much a stepping stone, it's just people's desires and what flavors they want range the spectrum from light to dark, sweet to bitter, and there's just a growing segment of people who are, now that they're experimenting, they're getting not so excited about hoppy, dark, bitter beers. They'd rather have something on the sweeter side. And it turns out fruit beer is a good way of giving them some enjoyment.
Now, do you find that that some of the beers are more gender specific? Are women drinking more fruit beers? Or are they drinking more of the Pete's Wicked Ale? I mean, what do you find in the market these days?
Having been to a lot of beer tastings and beer festivals, the quote rumor is that females like sweet fruit beers. The reality is there are just as many men that like fruit beers and just as many women who are hopheads and stout heads. So you can be really generic and say that fruit beers are more of a transitional beer and more for females, but the reality, at least given the segments of people who come to beer tastings on that and the beer festivals, it's mixed. There's no one classification that fruit beers are only for females, not at all.
Let's talk a little bit about your summer beers that are extremely popular and I might add extremely tasty. Let's talk a little bit about the wheat beer phenomena this summer. Everyone has one. If they don't, they're making one now. Tell us a little bit about your offerings this summer.
Well, our summer seasonal is called Summer Brew, and there really haven't been many summer seasonals. Historically, brewers couldn't make beer during the summer, so there was no really such thing as a summer seasonal. There were fall seasonals and spring seasonals and winter seasonals. But the phenomenon of wheat beer goes back many, many years to the Northwest, where they came out with a variant of wheat beers, basically an American version of a German Hefeweizen, or a yeast wheat beer, meaning cloudy. And that caught on strong in the Northwest. Haven't seen much of that phenomenon on the East Coast yet. But in Germany, one of the popular beers during the summer, they have two wheat beers, the Weiss beer, or white beer, and then the Hefeweizen, the cloudy wheat beer. And first time I was ever in Munich, I had a great time just walking around, going from beer garden to beer garden, and having Weiss beers, and we put a slice of lemon in it. So Summer Brew it is made with barley and wheat. It's filtered, so it's clear. It's more of a Weiss style. But we just went ahead and put the lemon in rather than putting the lemon on the side. And the really neat thing about Summer Brew is there are two characteristics within the beer that make it nice on a hot day like today. Number one, wheat in beer adds a tartness. And I don't know about you, but during the summer, if I'm having lemonade, I'd much rather have tart lemonade than sweet lemonade. It really quenches your thirst. And by putting the lemon in, the citrus of the lemon gives a tartness too. So both those components give a really neat flavor characteristic to the beer that makes it thirst quenching.
Okay. And what about your honey wheat?
Honey wheat is, call it more in the Hefeweizen style. American, we're using not the German yeast that gives this clove or banana aroma. We're using a traditional yeast. But it's unfiltered. You have the yeast still in it. And then as a flavoring, we're adding honey for aroma and a little flavor.
On a lot of the, especially on AOL and CompuServe, there's been a lot of talk in the beer forums about the fact that you have gone to cans for your summer beers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we're just running an experiment. A lot of locations around the country aren't amenable to glass at the shore, marinas, places like that. So we're doing an experiment, limited experiment around the country, just with summer brew, of getting beer in cans at areas where glass is not appropriate. Plus, we also got our beer on Continental Airlines. They're serving summer brew in cans on the airline, so that's kind of neat too.
So do you see this? How's the experiment going so far? Is the public accepting the cans? Are you finding that you're selling them the way you thought you would?
To be honest, I'm not close to it. I don't know.
I see. Let's talk a little bit about your background as far as you as an award-winning home brewer. Talk about getting into that. What it was like for you, how you first came involved in home brewing, and how that led up to the Pete's Brewing Company.
Well, my great-grandfather, August Bush, encouraged... No, I'm just kidding.
He just wants to see you spit my coffee.
No, the story is it's different than most traditional home brewers. I went to school in New York, and drinking age was 18. I didn't like drinking, didn't like beer, didn't like drinking. Met my wife in New York City, and she literally drove me to drink. I went to work for Xerox in Rochester after school, and still wasn't a beer drinker, but got into wine. And a friend of mine who invited us over for dinner one night had a great wine. So I asked him, "This is great wine, who made it?" And he smiled and he said, "He did." And I said, "What do you mean?" I didn't know you could make wine at home. He said, "Let me show you downstairs." And he showed me his winemaking equipment, and his wine was fantastic, absolutely fantastic, as good as any professional winemaker. And he showed me how to do it. But in Rochester, my apartment was too small; I had no room. But when we moved to California, we had a little house that actually had a cellar in it, which was unique for California. Not many houses do. So we decided to make wine.
And what year was this?
This is 1979.
Okay.
And there was a store in Berkeley, California called Wine and the People, which I'm not sure if you're aware of it on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, it turns out that was the mecca of the whole microbeer movement. Most home brewers who started home brewing got their supplies at Wine and the People and then went on to become professional brewers. Well, I went over there for the wine supplies, got the equipment, got 200 pounds of Stag's Leap Cabernet grapes. Stag's Leap Cabernet was my favorite wine at the time, and the fact that these guys could get grapes by the ton and then sell it in 100-pound lots was really neat. So we hand squeezed it, fermented it, stored it, and when we stored it, it dawned on me, geez, I got to wait 5 to 10 years before I can drink this stuff. I don't want to wait. So I called Wine and the People back, and the guy said, if you don't want to wait 5 to 10 years, make white wine. That's only a year or two. I said, too long, I don't want to wait. Then he said, try home brewing, you can do it in 60 days. And I said, I hate beer. And he said something that I thought was really profound. He said, have you ever had a home brew? And I said, no. And then he said, then you haven't had real beer. And I thought, wow, I don't know what he means by that, but that's an interesting statement. So I tried it. And I forget whether it was a pale ale or an amber ale, but you know, the typical malt extract first batch. And when I tried it 2 months later, it was better than any beer I'd ever had and really got in it. And at that time, I worked for a company called Rollm. They made computerized telephone equipment for businesses.
How do you spell that?
R-O-L-M. It's the initials of the 4 founders.
Okay.
And I started a home brew club at Rollm. We called ourselves the Worrywarts. And home brewed for 7 years, and a bunch of friends and I, every month or two, we also like barbecue. That's one of my favorite things in the world, too. And every couple of months, we'd go to a county park and have barbecue ribs and drink home brew. And one of the neat things about Rollm, Rollm was a great company. I had a great time there. One of the things that was really neat was they had a benefit that was every 7th year, they gave you a 12-week paid sabbatical on top of your vacation. So in 1985 was my year of sabbatical. I took my 12 weeks off and then added 4 weeks of vacation and traveled to Europe for a month, drinking a lot of beer, traveled to South America, trying beer down there, including chicha. That's a whole other story. But in between trips, a friend of mine who had been at Rollm but went on to another company came over and he said, why are we working for other companies? And by that time, Rollm was so successful, IBM bought it, and then IBM cratered it. But so I was an IBMer then. I said, why are we working for big companies? Let's start our own. And we thought about, the idea was great, but what do we do? And my friend doesn't drink at all, so it's kind of funny. My partner doesn't drink at all, and I didn't drink beer until I was 29 and 79. So here we are in the beer business.
So you're 32.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Have another beer, please. So we thought about what do we want to do, and our goal was to start a company that was in an industry on the ground floor. So I was close to I was home brewing and close to the microbeer movement. And at that time, 85, there may have been 30, 35 brew pubs and micros around the country. Not very many.
And most of those on the West Coast.
Most on the West Coast. New Am was here. Sam Adams. What's his name up in Albany? Bill.
They just recently changed their name, didn't they? A couple of years ago.
Whatever. Anyway, there. Dock Street may have been around then. There weren't very many. There were a couple. So anyway, Bill Newman. That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Bill Newman. He was making beer. So we thought we have as good a chance as anybody as making good beer, because we wanted to make world-class beer. But we decided we would differentiate ourselves by taking the beer seriously, but not ourselves. Let's have fun with this. And we did a business plan. We looked at the industry, and we thought, yeah, let's give it a shot. So we got in. We had we incorporated in April '86, so we just had our 10th anniversary, and we wanted to have fun with it, and we still try to have fun with it.
Now, the first year that you were in business, how many barrels did you sell? Do you remember?
How many barrels? Let's talk about bottles.
Okay.
1986, we produced, I think, 400 cases.
Okay. And last year, how many cases did you produce?
Almost 5 million.
So you've come a long way in just 10 years, haven't you?
Yeah.
Talk about that ride. I mean, it's certainly been a fast ride for you. I mean, you've worked very, very hard. I can still remember interviewing you, it was 1992, I think, or 1993, at Zip City. And we were having a cigar dinner there.
Cigar upstairs, I remember that.
That's right. And I mean, at that time, I thought to myself, boy, look at this guy. He's really on his way. But I mean, just in a couple of 3 years now, I mean, you've even doubled that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you must be extremely happy.
Oh, I pinch myself. It's really, literally a dream come true. But when my friend and I started the company, we had a couple strategies that we were trying to implement. One was make world-class beer, have fun doing it. The other was focusing on the marketing and distribution of the product. Our decision early on, given the excess capacity in the industry, was to do our own twist on what's called contract brewing. We've always maintained control over the formulas and the production, but not to own our own brick and mortar. Now we're changing that. We're looking at building a brewery in California right now, but we've always looked at maintaining control over our destiny, but using other people's breweries, but really putting a lot of focus on marketing and distribution. And one of the things that my friend and I decided early on was we tried running it ourselves for the first couple of years, keeping our day jobs, and that wasn't really working out. But we knew that the real secret, great beer doesn't sell itself. A lot of brewers out there think they have the best beer in the world, and a lot of them do, but just by having the best beer doesn't get it on the shelf. So we have always wanted to have a focus of putting programs together to support our wholesalers, to support our retailers. And we knew we didn't have that experience, and rather than taking time to learn it, we did a search, and we went out and looked for people to run the company day to day. And we had, in 1989, we found a guy, Mark Vizzini, from Seagram's. He grew up in Napa, wanted to come back to California, and we hired him to be president, and his expertise was beer distribution and marketing, and the guy's a genius.
And now you are in all 50 states, aren't you?
49 plus
40
plus the district. Well, the last state is Utah, and we'll be in there ultimately.
I see. And you have all of your beers available in these states, or?
As far as I know, all beers are available in all locations. We sell a beer in the UK. I don't think we have all the flavors in the UK yet.
So obviously you're going to start branching out overseas as well.
We've been in the UK for coming up on 3 years, 2.5 years.
And how are sales there? How are people taking to your beer?
Sales continue to grow. The problem with the UK is they have something called an excise tax, that's higher than ours. So what may sell for $5.99, $6.49 a six-pack in the U.S. is double that in the U.K. The tax to get it across the border is extremely high, and then they tax their beer on a sliding scale based on alcohol. That may not mean much to your audience, but it's pretty significant, and it's really changed a lot of beer styles over the years from 1915. In the U.S., we're taxed at a flat rate, $18 a barrel, except for the small brewers exemption, but it's $18 a barrel in general. In England, it's a sliding scale. The higher the alcohol, the higher the tax. So if you go to a pub, I'd say 80% of the beers you get in a pub these days have an alcohol content of 2 to 3% by weight, because the beer can only be affordable if they put a low amount of alcohol in it. Otherwise, the price would go through the roof, and the pub drinkers would they would just be too expensive.
Well,
so just
okay.
In general, most American beers, domestic beers and specialty beers, are in the range of, let's say, 3.5% by weight to 4.2. So it's a fairly narrow window, but that's almost double the typical English beer. So Wicked Ale, which is about 4%, is almost double the standard pub beer. So the taxes on it are that much higher. So long story short, it's about $2 a bottle over there at a grocery store. So you have to fight the price, but our sales keep increasing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because here in the United States, obviously, we have our own neo-prohibitionist movement. Joe Kennedy wants to introduce even more legislation that could affect beer advertising, and there's been talk about luxury tax on beer and liquor in the past. Where do you see the politics of beer going over the next year and a half in Washington?
I don't know. I'm not a politician. I don't know what the waves in and out of.
Well, is your company doing anything to help to educate some of our congressmen and senators?
Yeah, personally I have. I've gone to Washington twice now for the lobbying effort on Capitol Hill, where the Brewers Association of America, BAA, Henry King's organization, works with the Beer Institute, which is big brewers. That's their unit. The brewers work hand in hand with the NBWA, which is the National Beer Wholesalers Association, and it's really neat because brewers sell beer to wholesalers, and generally things get along famously. But on the other hand, everybody has different views of the world. But this is one time where the brewers and the wholesalers get together in unison and lobby Capitol Hill on beer issues. And I've personally been to the California Senator's offices and local congressional districts, and even I'd say less than 3 blocks from our office is Anna Eshoo, our local congresswoman's office, and I've been over to her office bringing up beer issues. At least not bringing them up, but just saying, here's what we are, here's what we're doing as an industry, here are some of the issues that have happened in the past, here are some of the potential issues, and here's what our thoughts are. Just the philosophy that Henry King has embedded in my brain is, it's better to be talking to your legislators when there aren't any issues to educate them than go to them at the last minute when the issues are coming up. So there really aren't any significant issues as far as I know. I couldn't go to this year's effort because the Microbrewers Conference in Boston was on the same weekend, and I couldn't do both. But as far as I know, there are no key issues that are on Capitol Hill at this moment. But it's an ongoing effort to know your congresspeople. I grew up in Connecticut, and I always stopped in to see my original home district congressman to talk to him as well. So right now, as far as I know, there are no key issues on the table, but it's an ongoing educational process.
I see. Let's talk a little bit about Boston. We were both up there together, and not together, obviously, but
come on,
for
we were.
Well, I wasn't going to say. But one of the real things that was talked about by Jim Cook, for instance, was quality control and freshness. And I know that your company has been very proactive in that area. Would you agree with him that is a problem in the industry? And what steps do you take to assure freshness and quality control with your beers on the market?
Well, quality is number one. best examples I can give you is, I'm here in New York, I'm not in the office, I'm out all the time, and I put on beer education seminars. And the order that I talk to are wholesaler sales forces, retailers, whether they be grocery stores or bars or restaurants, and then the general consumers. And most people don't understand that beer is perishable. The two things that destroy beer are light and heat. So a lot of education into how to store beer, how to handle beer. And if you go to a store and there's a display right by the front window in the sun, that you don't want to do that. Right? You want to keep beers in the back. Now, when I do my beer education seminars, I try to have a variety of beers for people to taste. Domestics, specialty beers, imports, you name it. I have a whole variety, including green bottled imports. And probably the best example that comes to mind is when we do it at our office. We have a Safeway, maybe less than a mile from our office. And I got to know the liquor manager. His name's Don. And I'd go over there once a month, once every 2 months, buy a variety of beers, and he'd keep asking me, what are you doing? I tell him I put on education seminars, and he said, can I come? And I said, sure, come on. So the time he came, we were going through the beers, and we got to a green bottled import, and we opened it up, and I was describing how this style should have a fine aroma of hops, and we were getting the fine aroma of skunks. And Don, all of a sudden, Don's eyes opened wide, and his jaw dropped. And he looked at me and he said, did you buy this in my store? I said, huh? He said, you mean I'm selling this beer to my customers? And I went, huh? And he had no idea what can destroy beer. So it's a long, long educational process on how to handle beer, and so people know that they can get good beer.
I think that brings up the three-tier system, which has also been not really a controversial subject, but it's been a subject that has opened a little bit of debate because not too many people understand the three-tier system and what that means to beer. How do you feel about the three-tier system? Do you think that it's an institution that we need to keep?
Well, let's just clarify first. What the hell is a three-tier system?
Okay.
In the beer market in the U.S., which is a little bit different than something like in the UK. In the U.S., because of the possibility of monopolistic powers, the government said we will have this three-tier, which is brewer, wholesaler, and retailer. The consumer is actually the fourth tier. In the UK, what really almost destroyed the beer movement in the UK was something called the Tied House movement. The Tied House literally means the house or the pub is tied to the brewery. So when the pubs are owned by the brewery, the pubs sell the beer from that brewery. So your choice is limited. If you're a small upstart company and you want to sell your beer in a pub, and you go to a Tied House, guess what? You can't sell it because they're owned by the brewery, and those laws are being relaxed. I guess Tied Houses now can have one guest beer. So it's a step in the right direction, but still limited. So the three-tiered system here is the brewer, the wholesaler, and the retailer. You can't be all three tiers in the U.S. We are one tier. We're a producer. We sell it to a wholesaler. What does the wholesaler do for us? First of all, they're feet in the street. They're local. They have a lot of salespeople. They also do something called merchandising, meaning they keep the shelves looking good. They set up displays. They work with the retailers. I'm a firm believer in the three-tier system because, first of all, we don't have the manpower to go around doing all the efforts that are required in bars, restaurants, and stores. That's what we pay, or we don't pay the wholesaler, but the wholesaler makes his margin so he can pay his sales force to go out and merchandise the product in the retail outlet. And that gets back to the initial strategy we had. We knew we had a chance of making great beer, and we've achieved that, but the real secret to success is marketing and distribution of the beer, and we utilize our wholesalers as much as we can to help us market our product. And so we're a firm believer in it, and guess what? It works.
Okay. Let's stop it there. Okay, so this will be Sound Bites, Pete Slosberg, the Gingerman, New York City, Friday the 21st. All right, anytime you're ready, you just speak into the mic.
So you just edit this, or
we'll
cut
just
it?
edit it. Well,
Okay.
You just talk about your beers.
Okay, hey, it's neat. About July 4th, we're coming out with 4 new beers, expanding our product line from 6 to 10. Just a couple of descriptors of what we're coming out with. We have a really neat one. Porter is a style that's a really old style. It's a style from the 1700s, a dark beer, not quite as stout, not as heavy and bitter as a stout, but Porters took over the English market in the 1700s. And Porter was actually a style that was a combination of 3 different beers that were blended together. And the blend including a dark beer made with molasses or treacle. Well, we're doing an American twist on that by adding maple, an American product, as a source of flavor to our porter. So it's an American twist on an English style, a dominant English style from the 1700s. We have a pale ale, Pete's Wicked Pale Ale, which is an American pale ale in the style of, the classic one is Sierra Nevada. This is our twist on our pale ale style. It's a bitter amber beer with a nice floral aroma of the hop.